So let's get into this.
Sure.
Basic tenets of the Zeitgeist Movement for someone on the street in London that doesn't know what it is. What would you tell them?
I would say that it's based on systems theory. I'm jumping to a more advanced stage because I think you know the principles. Well, you said the basic individual, but I think systems theory is what underlies it all. And here's the punchline. If we get away from this detached and anarchistic market system where everyone fights for resources and fights for their ability to create, and they work through this strata of interaction where no one's really listening to each other, everyone's trying to one each other up, they're hiding information. If we get rid of all of that and think about the world as one system, one architecture, one synergistic whole, and actually think about industry the same way, meaning, for example, universal standardization of all components for a given good genre. A car. I think in the future cars will be phased out for the majority with mass transit if we were to go down sustainable paths. But let's just assume that we had the system we have now. We need a bunch of cars. There are thousands of varieties of parts for any given car. You have to go to different companies and different locations to order parts. I'm sure if you drive, you have the same problem if anything goes out in your car. The mechanics say, oh, we got to order it from BMW and wherever, in Switzerland or whatever. If you standardize an automobile, which as in its basic function is very simple and you can make it extremely efficient and updatable, and it doesn't need to have the variety that's been generated through competition, then you'd have one car, you'd have an amazing amount of resources to fix that car all over the world, very inexpensively because all of those component parts can be mass-produced with high efficiency because of what the nature of large-scale production means. It means cost and resource energy goes down. That's what that's why things get cheaper when in investment when they finally get it past the prototype stage and they mass-produce. And once you do that, you have a system that's actually recognizing that particular item across the entire world, meaning that there's no waste anymore because everyone's using the same basic system. Now, people hear that and they think, oh, well, that means everything's standardized. I'm going to have the same thing as everybody else, Soviet communism. They think things like that.
Right.
Not necessarily.
Because the knee-jerk capitalists are quickly to group you in as a communist.
There's with new advancements in 3D printing and the way you can build facades of cars, everyone could have their own facade. You can make your own idealized facade very easily, customizable with big, uniform, standardized 3D printing machines.
Right. I mean, you're talking about systems.
You create a larger architecture, you create a holistic view of the entire architecture of society, and you work on that level. And once you do that, I'd say exponential increase of efficiency, I would say more thousands and thousands and thousands of times of efficiency increase would exist to meet the needs of the human population and beyond if we did that.
Okay. And what does that mean for the human population? We become happier, we become healthier?
If you remove, that's another level. If you were to get rid of the labor for income system, which is on its way out anyway due to technological unemployment, we have
us being replaced by machines.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Now, it's also a social imperative to replace people with machines now because of the ability to create an abundance. That's how it's actually happening. So the fact that we preserve human labor in the wake of these advents of replacing humans with machines, which do not need vacations, do not need all the things that make us human, that require us to continue our health, also removing all the dangers and everything else. Machines can run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, especially if you really optimize the production and you use these standardized protocols I just mentioned. You really thought about it holistically, so you don't have to worry about all these different parts. I mean, the reason manufacturing fails today, even in the automation sector, is, again, because nothing's standardized. And that's a big part of it. You elevate human society to a new level. So you create this industrial level where we can do it, statistically proven, it's in that book, where we can automate the majority of everything that we need to elevate society out of this epic period of our history where we have done nothing but try and survive through labor and income.
Okay, so no more worker bees, and we all become creative.
We become creative.
Creative, okay.
There's a great book. People talk about incentive a lot, and they think that if you don't have the drive of money, or competition, that you won't have incentive.
And you've quoted Daniel Pink before. We've had him on the show.
Oh, you have, good.
Fascinating what he says is that one of his tenets or one of his observations is once people make enough money to be comfortable, that added extra compensation does not make them.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I think he argues it makes them less.
Exactly. And the more you get, the more property you get, the more you're basically kind of owned, the more requirements you have, the more you need to sustain that level. And that's a cultural neuroses too, with built-in status and advertising. It's unfortunate. People think that they need to get more and more and more stuff. I envision a world where people have everything accessible within their community and they rent it, so to speak, even though it's not rental in the sense of currency.
Right.
And you live in a clean, mobile world. Just imagine not having. I'm moving right now into a space for advertising, and people like Bernays, Edward Bernays, they said we need a consumption society. We don't need people to think in this early American. Puritanical is the wrong word, but it was conservative. Early America did not have a status-driven need for property. It was more of a Christian, simplistic. Puritanical is the wrong word. There's another word I could use. I can't remember what it is, but you get the point.
Yes.
That value had to be created, and because what is our society? What is our economy? We have laborers, we have consumers, and we have employers, and money has to constantly move. It's like a gas pedal on a car. This is economic growth. This is 5% unemployment. This is 10% unemployment.
Less money changing hands, right?
So what is causing this? Buying and selling and creating and using resources and wasting energy and materials nonsensically just to keep the machine going. So with that, advertising came forward, and it's huge. As I said earlier, advertising is the biggest expense for most corporations now because it's really about social manipulation at this point. People have, in a lot of ways, especially in Western society, what they need. I would say there's a little bit of an argument to that, but they have the ability to get what they need, but they want more and more and more because that is what the culture has taught them. And it's required. It's required. If we didn't have that value, the entire economy would collapse.
Right. I think the perfect example, give me all the right answers. I just want to know an idea of, because we talked about redistribution of wealth as a temporary way of doing it, but the big transition, is it going to take some anarchy to get there?
Here's what I think
it will.
Here's what I think will happen. Well,
and that's okay.
All transitions are kind of ugly, unfortunately.
Right.
But here's what I think will happen. Once, maybe, if things go with the exponential increase of information technology, which turns into applied technology, we are going to see this revolution of 3D printing and the like fairly soon, and maybe in 2 decades, if it's not too inhibited. And same with other automated facilities, automated machines for different purposes. Everything will get smaller, and eventually you're going to see a high-tech set of communes emerge on the world. If the market system stays in play, you're going to continue to see the economic decline, and people are going to get more and more desperate. Either they're going to rise up, or they're going to get out. Just as we've tried to do, different pockets and communities have tried to get out for God knows how long. I mean, there's still communes all over the world.
Off the grid, is that get out?
Off the grid is a good way to define it, but not off the grid just in the sense of water and electricity. Meaning they're going to go and they're going to start their own society with this high-tech technology. Okay. And because the technology is so efficient, and because the ability to use resources in such an efficient way will exist in this technology, the need to get lots of resources from the external won't be even remotely as much of an imperative. So they can isolate. They can actually isolate, but they don't live in tents like you see communists. They'll be high tech. They'll use different forms of. There's lots of technology out there I could talk about that people have been talking about for years that will eventually come to fruition outside of 3D printing. There's modular home construction. That you basically create a machine that can do modular home construction, and then you create varieties of it through CAD engineering, and you can have printing machines build all your homes. You can have geothermal energy in most regions in the world. Once the technology happens, we can go down far enough into the earth, and it's no longer inhibiting with some of the destabilization that happens, which is EGS is a big new technology out there that can do that. So long story short, people will go out and they will start to develop their own off-the-grid communities, but in a high-tech way. And once that happens, and by the way, this kind of goes into my film, because I'm going to depict this transition.
Okay.
I'm hesitant to give too much.
This is the new series.
The new series.
This is the Inter-Reflections trilogy.
Yeah. And I'm not going to give too much away on that, but I'm
never give too much away.
The reason I don't want to say much is because it's so related to this film trilogy that my transition is the biggest interest for me. But I do believe that this is what's going to happen. And once a nation, because we'll still have this nation sitting there, once all the deprivation occurs, a nation to step up and say, this makes perfect sense. We don't need to listen. We don't need to abide by the globalization rules and the market ethic and the banking system anymore. We are going to do this on our own.
Do what they're doing over there because they got it right.
Exactly. They're going to start it. Okay. Someone will start it independently, and it will carry forward in principle. And I think a nation, probably a Latin American nation, which has a lot of abundant resources,
like a Costa Rica or something.
Sure,
we'll go there first.
And they will block themselves off, and they will do it, and they will set the new precedent. And here's the thing about human psychology: there's an old Louis C.K. Joke that I saw recently, and he's becoming
so famous.
He is. He's smart. He's a smart guy. Yeah. He has an underline of social awareness that he never quite gives away, but I really appreciate it when it leaks through. He's very subtle, isn't he? He is. He talks about being on a plane, and the guy, there's internet on planes on most domestic flights now, and it was out on his plane, and the guy next to him got all huffy and upset. And Louis responds, he's like, we're sending satellite to space and back. We're flying on a plane, moving hundreds of miles through the air, and we just got internet on the plane, and this guy's already complaining about not having it, as though it was always there, as though the guy is so deserving of it. But there's an element of human psychology they're very true with. And the moment people see this type of transition idea in motion and see the way the world could be, they're going to expect it. They're going to want it because they're going to know how much easier the lives will be and how much more productive and how much safer and their kids. It will be almost instantaneous realization that this is what we need to do.
A bloodless transition. I see blood.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen when obviously the establishment will fight anything